Sorry, here it goes again, loading.
It does say it's streaming.
Yes, okay, so everybody but Susie, go ahead and stop your video and mute.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you've joined us for the Tarrant County Food Policy Council meeting. This is our first virtual meeting, and we're pretty excited about it. I want to give a huge shout out first to Becca Knutson, who has made this all happen. She's lined up all the speakers and made sure we had all the technology working properly. We are really glad that we're able to do this. Welcome if you are on Zoom or if you are watching via Facebook Live. If you're on Zoom, if you'll take a minute to introduce yourselves in the chat box, let us know who's here. We'll be monitoring that. And so just let us know your name and if you have an organization that you're affiliated with. And if you have any questions during the presentations, please direct them to the chat box as well. Again, that'll be monitored, and there will be a time for questions during the meeting. And we'll also have an opportunity for others to share if there's anything special that you want to share with the entire group. You'll be able to do that at the end of the meeting. So today we have a series of speakers that are going to talk about various parts of the food system that have been affected by COVID-19. And I do want to recognize that we planned this meeting before the other events that have taken place in our country, and a different sort of unrest has come to the forefront. That is also become a discussion within our board, and we will be addressing those issues, the issues of racial injustice, from our organizational perspective as well. But for now, we're going to go back to talking about COVID-19. And with us today, we have Michelin Hines. She's a past chair of the Food Policy Council and director of community nutrition at Tarrant County. We have a Tarrant County Food Bank, excuse me. We also have the president of the Tarrant County Food Bank with us, Charlie Blaylock, who's a farmer and farmers market manager. We'll talk about food systems. And then we also have Brenda Patton talking about double up food bucks at the Cowtown Farmers Market. Make sure I'm not missing anything else. We are excited to have each of these folks here, and I'm going to pass it back to Becca to get us started.
Thank you, Susie. Our first presenter today is Michelin Hines. She is the past chair of the Tarrant County Food Policy Council and the director of community nutrition here at Tarrant Area Food Bank. She's going to talk a little bit today about some vulnerable populations in our community related to food insecurity, and kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the conversation today. So I will turn it over to Michelin.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here as soon as Becca enables it for me. Well, hang on just a moment and see if I can get that up. All right. There we go. We're getting it done. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. We're talking about vulnerable populations in the community. I'm starting with the national data. It's the strongest data that's available, and I will speak to what we can see locally as it relates to this data. Let's see if I can get my slides moving. Not yet. There we go. Now I know. All right. So when we look at how Texas ranks around the rest of the country, you can see from this slide that the prevalence of food insecurity is higher here than it is in other places. All across the South and in some parts of the East Coast, you'll see that it's higher than average. Right now, the average is considered 11%, and Texas is ranking higher than that. It's often believed that that is due to the border towns and the nature of various kinds of immigration that Texas has, but that does not seem to be reflected in the data. There are other fundamental issues, a lot of them policy issues, that play a big role in how that works. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And here I just called out some of the specific populations where we've seen the issue. So all households with children, again, these are all just higher than the 11.1% national average, but some populations are twice as high. So those households with children that are headed by a single woman is at 27.8%, almost twice as high, okay? You'll find that most of my slides have the link to where I obtained this information at the bottom in almost all cases. When we continue on, we're looking at Black non-Hispanic households, also at a very high rate, at about almost twice the national average. And as would be expected, low-income houses in general are higher than the national average. Okay. If we start to look more closely to our community, I've got a map of the Metroplex here. On the left side in the square is Tarrant County. On the right side, you can see Dallas County. And not that we want to compete with Dallas County, but it is a nice comp and to look at how, look at all of North Texas and see where the similarities and the differences are. So we're going to continue with some other screenshots of this map to kind of drill in a little bit deeper. Okay, whoops, try not to go too fast, sorry. So when we get a little bit closer, there's some things that you can start to see where the major roadways are a little bit easier, things like that. And you'll see all of these green sections on the map are considered food deserts. And what's significant about a food desert is typically residents there don't have a viable grocery store or other kind of retailer that can provide them with adequate basic food, healthy foods, regular ingredients, produce, milk, dairy, meats, all of those kinds of things that many of us have the privilege to have nearby our homes. So these locations don't have the same access that the rest of us have. Doesn't mean they don't have the same need, they just don't have the same resources. You can see various pockets we have known for a long time. The area around Forest Hill, the south side of Fort Worth have been areas that do not have the same access as many of us, okay? Again, I'm gonna hone in a little bit closer here. Right here, again, that's the south side neighborhood. There's several neighborhoods there, but south side is included there. You can see over around Arlington, it picks up as well. So all of this information is on the USDA website. The links were included in some of the previous slides. And there's a lot of information that you can look at here and different ways of viewing the problem. One interesting note about food deserts, we call them that, but it doesn't mean there's no food there. It typically means that there's not good access to healthy food. And so what is there often are the alternatives, much more unhealthy food. Okay. So again, I called this neighborhood out in particular because it relates to a story that I'm going to share with you. DFW Child did an article a few months ago that talked about a resident of this area and what it takes for her to get food for her family. She has a multi-generational household that includes elderly persons as well as young children. And I've taken a snippet here so that you can take a look and see what she has to do to get food. So essentially, with a grocery store only 3 miles away, it's not always as simple as hopping in a car and heading down the street for most people. In her case, they have to walk, and it takes them about 3 hours. And that's very difficult for them to do. If you go on to read the rest of the story, you'll see that she has to buy quite a bit of food at one time to make that kind of endeavor worth the effort. So she's having to bring home a lot of food. And as you all know, fresh foods don't typically last as long. So she states in the article, she shops about once a month. And it's very difficult to find a lot of fresh food that's going to last that long. Okay. Here's another snippet. I wanted to be inclusive of the whole Metroplex. So this one points to a similar situation in the Dallas area, South Dallas in particular. And I like this excerpt because it also includes part of a solution. You'll see in about the middle of the article that he points to starting his own garden as a way to make sure he and his neighbors and his community could access good, healthy food. So I'll leave this slide here for just a moment longer so everyone can kind of get through what's there. But it's a great article and it's worth reading for yourself. Okay. We're going to talk about some other factors that affect people's ability to access food effectively. The first being age. Children are a very vulnerable population. They are not autonomous enough to be able to find the resources that they need on their own. They absolutely rely on adults to help them make food be on the table and have enough to eat day in and day out. And so it's especially important for children because they're still growing, and growing children need a lot of nutrients. The research is showing that they don't perform as well in school, that they don't have the same potential even as adults to hold a great job and to do well at work when they are not nourished when they are young. So everything that we're talking about here is very well researched. We can't go too far in depth on any of these points. It would take too long. So just keep looking. There's lots of great information on Feeding America and other hunger sites that can get down to the research level and explain that very well. The other issue, of course, is the health disparities that come with not being able to access food well. So we see that with children and with adults, especially elderly adults, but you have more asthma and anemia and problems like that in children. Behavior problems are another factor that comes up both in the classroom and in the home and are affected when children don't have enough to eat. Okay. Seniors, on average, have a lower than the national average rate of food insecurity. However, that's not true here in North Texas. The latest data shows that we are at 9%, which, okay, so that is slightly lower, but not as low as the rest of the country at 7.3. And I suspect that's also heavily underreported. We know from speaking with seniors that they tend to underreport their need. They'll say they're fine. Perhaps they can't make the same things that they used to, but they're consuming food. It's just not a well-balanced diet or as nutritious as it would have been when they were more able to obtain food on their own and prepare food themselves. That becomes a big barrier when you can't stand for the amount of time it takes to prepare a meal, or if you have arthritis in your hands and aren't able to, work a can opener or hold a knife comfortably long enough to make a meal. They also have chronic health conditions that play a big part in this. And it could be a bit of a chicken and the egg, which one came first, the food insecurity or the chronic health condition. But we do know that there's a correlation. Depression is a big one and often not discussed enough. Asthma, various heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and as we mentioned earlier, the physical limitations. Okay. Gender plays a role. We don't often always think about that as well. And it starts with things like gender-based pay discrimination, the fact that there is a correlation between food insecurity and violence in homes has a big effect on women in particular and children. Women have much more responsibility in many cases for childcare in the home. That could mean in some cases that they're working a full-time job and still being the primary caregiver when they're in their after hours. It could mean that they can't afford childcare, so they can't afford to work. It could mean a lot of things. Or as we said before, single parent households struggle with this quite a bit. Higher risk of obesity, that's a fairly more recent finding. Depression is increased. And for pregnant women, the incidence of gestational diabetes, iron deficiency, and low birth weight are more significant as well. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about race and ethnicity. And I don't know how well you all can see this particular chart, but again, you can find the link here at the bottom. The main thing that you'll notice about this chart is this huge gap between these two sections. So at the top of the chart, we have Hispanic families in the orange line. The blue line are Black non-Hispanic families, okay? Down here, we have the average household, so that's everyone averaged. Red is, I'm sorry, we'll do purple. Purple is white, non-Hispanic, and red is everyone else. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference when you look at race and ethnicity and who's food insecure. I also wanted to mention sometimes are overlooked when we have conversations about this in food. Institutional racism, structural racism, both of those lead to generational poverty and health disparities. And all of that, again, is very well documented. This links to an excellent presentation from an organization that has compiled a lot of data from various government policies and social things that have happened that have affected that space as well. So it's very, very much worth your time to read that. And then I saw this at a presentation by the Tarrant County Public Health Department last year, and it just does such a wonderful job of explaining these concepts and why this is a problem. So on the far left, we have equality. Everybody gets everything the same. And you can see that even though everyone got the same thing, it doesn't help everyone equally well. We've made some adjustments so that people get what they need and everyone has an equal view here. But here's reality. That's what most people are living with. Some people have a whole lot more than what they really need. Some people have just enough, and other people are at quite a serious disadvantage. So we want to do work in our community, in our organization as the Food Policy Council, and in our other organizations to help at least bring things back to some equity in our community. Economic factors are another significant consideration. I've got 3 different graphs here for everyone. And what's interesting here is that most people assume that the food insecure are homeless or perhaps elderly or disabled. But it surprises a lot of people that these are working people, that these are the working poor. You can see here, many of these folks are college educated. Okay? I'm going to try to be sensitive for time and just kind of keep moving. Employment status, many people are employed. And you can see here the various ways that they are employed, whether full-time or part-time, what some of those reasons may be as well. And disability status, again, many people are able-bodied adults who are just having trouble making ends meet. Now, if you are disabled, it is even harder sometimes to access the food that you need. One of the programs that we operate here at Tarrant Area Food Bank, we have someone who's blind who comes to receive services with us, and she finds it, she's able to prepare food in her own home. She does it maybe a little bit differently with some adaptive resources. But she does have trouble getting to the grocery store and doing some of those things that sighted people are able to do so easily. This slide I just included because it's a question we often get. So if people don't have enough money for food, what do they do? And the answer essentially is that they make trade-offs. They might not pay rent, or they might not buy food. They might have to choose between medicine and food. They might have to choose between transportation and food. And there's also here some good things that people can do. They can grow their own food garden and do some other things, but mostly they're having to make those trade-offs to make it work. And then just lastly, I wanted to point to these 6 ways that we can start to make it better. I think that Victoria will be speaking to these more later, but if you work for an organization, I wanted to point these out in particular. There are 6 great ways that we can make sure that we are reaching and supporting vulnerable populations, and it really does start with policy and planning, and ultimately building awareness and engaging with the population to help supply their own solutions in partnership with us. And then finally, I just want to say thank you. Here's my contact information and the email address for the Food Policy Council in case you need to get in touch with us.
Thank you, Micheline. So Micheline set the groundwork for us to let us know what the environment for food insecurity typically looks like. And next, I want to introduce Julie Butner, who is the president and CEO at Tarrant Area Food Bank. And she's going to talk about how COVID-19 has impacted those populations and some new need that we're seeing in the community as well, and kind of the response that TAFB has presented. I will be sharing Julie's slides here, and we do have a video, so I'm hoping that translates well. So Julie, let me pull up your slides and we'll get started.
Great, thanks Becca, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. Obviously been quite unusual for us here at Tarrant Area Food Bank I began as the president and CEO in January, and I think within days we had a crisis to deal with, and COVID has really turned our operating model upside down, and we're just sharing how we've reacted to it. I think the team has done a remarkable job. But let me start with this for those of you who are not aware of who we are at Tarrant Area Food Bank. I want to start with a video. So Becca, do you mind showing that for the group, please?
Let's hope I can do it. Here we go.
Tarrant Area Food Bank food doesn't just appear on a plate. It goes on a journey before it reaches the table. Donors fill our trucks full of high-quality food, and it arrives at our distribution center in quantities far too big for most of our partner agency organizations to accommodate. We rely on volunteers to help us sort and repackage food into more manageable portions. Then we take it to our partner agencies across 13 counties in North Texas. We make sure people have access to the food they need when they need it. Sometimes all that people need to get through a hard time is someone who cares.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. So I think the first thing I want to point out is that oftentimes people in the general public have confusion around the difference between a food bank and a pantry. And so clearly from the video, you can see that we are a large distribution center. We have 170 grocer partners who support us with food donations, in addition to the food donations that we receive from the USDA, the federal government, and the local TDA, the Texas government. And then we take that food that comes in bulk shipment, and we break it down into smaller quantities that are then distributed to our 350 or so pantries. And pantries can look anything like a school, an ISD, where there's a pantry inside the school, a healthcare clinic, where there's a pantry inside the healthcare clinic, a church, the Boys and Girls Club, just a whole host of different organizations that act as pantries in neighborhoods where they can directly access the people who need our support and need our safety net for some period of time. So that's kind of pre-COVID. Within COVID, of course, immediately we had to deal with shelter-in-place restrictions that impacted high-risk populations, which included those who are 65 and older, which Micheline talked about that group as a food insecure group. It also impacted the immune-compromised individuals. And many of those folks already have limited mobility, and some also have access to transportation issues or do not have a family member or a community member that can act as a proxy and help them get to the pantry that is local to them or in the community. In addition to that, we were faced with unbelievable unemployment issues where many people were furloughed or lost their jobs. And this truly is why food banks were originally started, to help people with a safety net. We all deal with crisis at some point in our lives. And if you have to make decisions about whether to pay the utilities or put gas in the car or buy food, it certainly is helpful to have a food bank or a pantry that can help eliminate one of those cost constraints that you have during a crisis. And unemployment, obvious contributor to experiencing a crisis. In addition to that, we also were dealing with social distancing restrictions. And what that meant for us at Tarrant Area Food Bank is we too had to consider whether or not we were practicing social distancing as we repackaged food, distributed food. So that had a direct impact on our volunteers that we heavily rely on. That we could no longer accept public volunteers because frankly, we didn't know where those volunteers would be coming in and whether or not they would be bringing the virus in and contaminating other volunteers and or spreading the virus to potentially our staff. So we made a decision very early on to close our doors to volunteers. We hired some individuals who were furloughed in the community, some of whom were from the hospitality industry. Pretty immediately, we brought on 15. We now have 20 contract employees. And then we were very fortunate. We're part of a larger food bank network under the Feeding America umbrella. So there are 200 recognized food banks across the United States that fall under an industry association called Feeding America. And they did a marvelous job of advocating on our behalf to both the local and federal governments. And eventually we were able to secure National Guard members. And so we have 90 Air National Guardsmen supporting us as volunteers with mobile distributions and as well as repackaging the big bulk product that I mentioned comes into our distribution center. Now, in addition to that, we had to think about, well, how are we getting the food into the hands of those who need it? And typically in our pantry model, we really push for choice so that when an individual comes to a pantry, they're picking up food just as you and I do when we go to the grocery store. There's choice. And if there's something that you don't eat, you're not forced to take it. But because that compromises the social distancing restrictions, we had to move to a drive-through distribution model. And what that means is just as you drive through a McDonald's or drive through Starbucks, there is a drive-through that's set up in a parking lot. Our Air National Guard and other local volunteers are there, and we ask the individual to pop their car, and we place a 25-pound box of emergency product or emergency groceries into their car. That's hugely different. And it really kind of, as I said, it goes against what we would ideally want to do because we would like for individuals to have choice when they come to our pantries, but we just had to move in this direction. And so that's a drive-through distribution. A mobile distribution is a one-time mobile that's set up much in the same way where individuals are driving their cars through and we're loading groceries into the trunk of their car. The outlook, for how this is going to impact the food insecure as well as the local food bank is long-term. So everything that we are understanding about the facts and the statistics are, as with the economy goes the food insecure. So until people are back at their jobs and re-employed, no longer furloughed, they will continue to need this safety net. And for Tarrant Area Food Bank, that's significant. We experience significant volume, and I'll get to that in the next slide. But we are anticipating that this is a 18 or 24 month scenario where we are looking at much higher than normal volumes of distribution. Becca, can you go to the next slide, please? So just by way of example, in April alone, Tarrant Area Food Bank distributed close to 6 million pounds of food for an annualized run rate of about 70 million pounds. And our facility at the warehouse was remodeled about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time, we built the distribution center to handle about 50 million pounds of food in a year, and we're now looking at 70 million pounds of food. And that's, again, expected to continue for 18 or 24 months. And that there was a little bit of an increase in volume anticipated, because you may recall that Fort Worth is the 13th fastest growing city in the United States. And so we were already anticipating some growth, but certainly not to the degree of 40% greater than our capacity. We're targeting 12 to 15,000 emergency boxes a week for our 350 pantries. And we're averaging, in April, we did 30 special events, and that means a special mobile distribution. That number looks closer to 50 in the month of May. In March, we had the 60% increase. However, I would say we are kind of leveling out at that 40%, and just continuing to expect to maintain these types of volume levels for another 18 to 24 months. Becca, can you move to the next slide, please? And I mentioned the Air National Guard. They truly have been a godsend. I mean, we could not have done what we are continue to do, what we're doing without their support. Just a lot of hands-on support in lieu of our volunteers, and they're doing everything from repacking the boxes, as you see in the picture, to going out to the mobile distribution sites, as you see in the bottom picture. We've also been working very closely with Catholic Charities to help those who are homebound. We have 2 programs in place today that are new as a result of COVID-19. One is in conjunction with Meals on Wheels and Catholic Charities, specifically targeting seniors who qualify for Meals on Wheels, whereby Meals on Wheels provides the frozen meal, Tarrant Area Food Bank provides the 25-pound box of pantry items, and Catholic Charities provides the transportation to deliver the meals to the individual's home. And the second program is for anybody else who is homebound who does not qualify for Meals on Wheels. And we are also in the process of setting up temporary warehouses to help with the capacity issue. Our long-term plan is to find something in Parker County, because we support not only Tarrant County, but also 12 other counties in the surrounding area. Parker is one that has a very high population of persons in need. And so we're looking at a satellite facility, a permanent satellite facility in the Parker area. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Julie, we did have one question about the continuance of mobile pantries and kind of the outlook on that. Micheline was able to field that question with an anticipated need of 18 to 24 months, like you mentioned, because of COVID-19.
Right, and I'll just mention one last thing. I mean, obviously, we're watching very closely what's happening with the ISDs. Without congregate feeding, they would not be providing meals in the cafeteria. And again, that's in support of the social distancing, and that has an impact on after-school meals that Tarrant Area Food Bank provides, as well as the in-school pantries where we provide items that the family can take home. You know, when you have a food insecure child, they're in a food insecure family environment. So we're trying to feed not only the child, but also the family. And so we're looking at continuing the mobiles and also other models that would support feeding children if schools have to change their model. So if they decide that they're going to do more online, or if they decide they're not going to be able to have cafeterias or congregate feeding at all, we really have to do something different with how we provide summer meals and after school meals.
Do we have any other questions for Julie? If you need a minute to think about it, you can always put it in the chat and I can bring those back up at the end of the meeting. Did you have anything else you wanted to share? Oh, it looks like we have a question. From Dave Aftendillian of TCU. He said, in longer terms, will Tarrant Area Food Bank have new volunteer needs?
New volunteer, yes. You know, that's a big question for us. You know, at what point do we think it's safe to bring volunteers back into our environment? And it also coincides with at what point does the public feel that they're comfortable to come into our environment as a volunteer? So, you know, hopefully, because we rely so heavily on them, we do know that the Air National Guard will be with us through the end of July and possibly the end of August. And so we're just having to really monitor and take it day by day, but would obviously want to have volunteers back just as soon as we could get them back. They've been a wonderful support to us and continue to help us where they can. If we're outside and it's open air, it's a little bit different scenario, so they can still help us in our community garden and they can still help us at mobiles. But in the distribution center, it's not the right environment to support the social distancing requirements. Good question, thank you.
All right, any other questions, folks? All right, thank you so much, Julie, for speaking with us today. It's nice to hear what's been happening because of COVID and the response and looking forward as well. So next we have Charlie Blaylock, who is a board member of the Food Policy Council. He is also a farmer at Shine's Farm Stand and the president of the Cowtown Farmers Market. He is going to speak to the importance of local food systems always, but especially now during this COVID pandemic. So I will turn it over to Charlie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, and thanks for having me. Thank you especially to Becca for setting this all up for us. So COVID revealed the importance of a local food system to us by showing us where our flaws were in our large food supply chain. We see that it was the distribution points and the processing plants are the places that we've had bottlenecks. Our large food industry that a lot of documentaries have been made about how horrible they are. There are bad things that occur in our large food distribution system, but that also has been able to feed a very large, quickly growing world. So we learned that there were flaws in the system, mainly the distribution points and the processing points. And that's not the first time we've had that lesson brought to us. We had the potato famine in Ireland, and we had tobacco farmers in Virginia who had no idea what to do when people stopped buying tobacco. Every time we've had an instance like that where we realized that local food systems weren't supporting local communities, where our teaching point has been that there's not enough diversity. interestingly enough, that COVID turned to a discussion of diversity in our nation, because in all agricultural systems and biological systems, diversity is the way we make something resilient. I suspect it'll be the same with our nation. The economics of local food also require diversity. We have local food as well as the large food system. It would be unreasonable to think that we could grow enough calories in the soil in Texas to feed as many people as the soil in Iowa feeds. Our big ag system has made food available to many people. And when we have our food justice conversation, while we would love for everyone to be able to buy grass-fed beef, asking somebody who brings home $500 a week to buy a $20 grass-fed steak is on the unreasonable side. So what we learned is that we need to have diversity in our system. We need to have the large food system, but it's going to bottleneck at those distribution and processing centers, and that's a great time to turn to the local farmers who don't have that problem. That being said, the local farmers tend to be smaller, and so they're not, certainly in Texas where the soil and environment are so tough to grow in, they're not going to be a complete stopgap. So how things have changed for us, for local farmers, is that when all of our farmers markets, which is most of our income, when all of our farmers markets shut down because they were designed as events, outdoor yoga, music, things that were made to make a farmer's market feel more like a festival became non-essential things. So farmers markets that were essentially grocery stores stayed open. And that made our local farmers cling to those farmers markets. We've added several members to Cowtown because they were at markets that closed down as non-essential businesses. And we were able, with the help of Brenda, Patton, and Blue Zones, and certainly some efforts from Micheline and Becca, that we were able to stay open as an essential grocery business. So we consolidated our farmers in the real farmers markets. Sorry, that was a little judgy, but and that worked out well because we saw a boost in our customers by a lot, as much as Julie was discussing with the food bank. We saw a significant increase in customers, and luckily we had kind of circled the wagons with our local farmers, and are able to meet as much of that demand as we can. So we as local farmers do not have, we're always trying to find more farmers, grow more farmers. It's been that way since 1985 when Jim Hightower was putting farmers markets together for the state of Texas. We have always been short farmers. There are about 30 solid farms in Fort Worth and about 6 million people, which means each one of those farms needs to feed 200,000 people apiece. And we will always be behind the curve and always be looking to grow more farms. That's the way, that's the only thing we can do to try and meet the increased demand. So what can the community do to support local farmers? The easy answer to that is shop at your farmer's market. Shop at your local farmer's market. It's best if you can go to a certified farmer's market, one that is guaranteed to be the farmers actually growing it. There are many markets where people buy wholesale and resell it in a farmer's market type environment, which is great in rural areas where there aren't enough farmers, which is a weird thing to say. But many of our rural communities only have farmers who buy wholesale and resell. You're still supporting an agricultural process that's outside of the larger agricultural system. So shop at a farmer's market. If you're in need, we have partnered with the food bank to work on what is called the Farmers Market Nutritious Program, Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which is directly connected to WIC clinics, and you can sign up to receive WIC vouchers. If you're a WIC recipient, you can sign up to receive vouchers to attend those farmers markets as well. We eat out a lot. As Americans, we all do. And we're very lucky in Fort Worth to have Ella B Fine Foods. She's absolutely, Chef Molly at Ella B is absolutely the most genuine and dedicated local chef that we have. Supporting her is how we can support local farmers, because she buys from our local farmers. She's in my beginning years, she's been up to 1/3 of my entire income for the year because of her restaurant. It's kind of expensive, so I would much rather eat out once well than several times not very well. Now, in local food, this kind of goes against what you would think is supporting our local farmers, but you can start your own garden. What we need the most is resilience, and that resilience comes through diversity. With me and other local farmers growing to sell, like I said, we're going to be behind the curve, and everybody who starts a garden helps grow local food and helps give us a more robust, resilient local food system. If you need help with that, keep an eye out on the Food Policy Council for the Dig Deep Conference. It's coming in July. We have a garden track in the Dig Deep Conference, and we also have a market, farming for market track. The best thing you can do to add more resilience to our local food system is to start an urban farm. My farm I live on an 1.25 acres, but I farm 1/4 acre. We did 10,000 pounds of produce. We grew 10,000 pounds of produce last year. And I'm not going to be happy until we're producing at least 20,000 pounds per year. That's on 1/4 acre. The beauty of the design of the new urban garden, market garden style is that we can produce a lot of produce from our own homes. It gives us good, healthy outside exercise, lots of things to think about, and also can add robustness to our food system. And if you're interested in that, then feel free to contact me. I can do what I can to help you get started, and I will also be helping with that on the Dig Deep Conference. So I saw I had a question, but I'm not quite sure how all this works. I'm a much better farmer than I am an interneter.
Here we go, Charlie. I'll read it for you. So Jeff from Taste Project would like to know, what do you feel could be done to provide an incentive for new farm creation? And I'll give you the other one as well. The second one comes from Victoria Nelson. Are there any farm share programs or CSAs in the area that we could promote? And we can, of course, do that offline. But we can make a list of those to promote on our website as well. So farm creation and farm share programs.
incentives for farm creation is a difficult topic. 80%, the USDA has this on their website, the 80% of farms across the US are supported by off-farm work. Farming is a labor of love. Every farm that operates, from big ones to little ones, they're all essentially family farms, and there's somebody who's working off the farm to at least support it, or at least provide health care. There is a farm school in Austin that I would love for us to get a model of up here in Fort Worth. I've talked to them a couple of times at an organic farming conference, and so having the resources for people to learn, I think, is probably the most important incentive that we can have. There are possibilities of farming empty lots and that kind of thing, but that's the best incentive I can think of. The second one is a farm share CSA. So we have a seasonality that's very interesting here, and that makes it's not diverse enough. It's difficult to grow enough different crops to fill a CSA basket. The idea that one farmer would grow 12 different crops at the same time here in Texas, because of our seasonality, is not a very likely thing. Texas, we cannot grow lettuce and tomatoes at the same time. Then we don't have the ability to make a salad. If you come to the Dig Deep conference, I can give you a workaround for that. But it won't be lettuce. It won't be salad. We can have salad, but it becomes different. Anyway, my point being that there aren't any genuine CSAs. I have seen several programs where people are commingling wholesale product along with something they grew. Like they grew tomatoes and then they add all sorts of stuff that they bought from California. So I've seen those programs, but I have not seen an intact one. The best thing to do is go to the farmer's market, and at Cowtown we have a pretty good, I like our diversity. I think we have as much as can be grown at the same time in Texas without making farmers learn 15 or 20 different crops to grow. That's all I got to say about that.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, ma'am. Thank you for letting me be on your food bank party, on your food policy council.
No problem. Thank you so much, Charlie. Next, we have Brenda Patton from Blue Zones Project. She's going to share about an exciting program that is taking place at the Cowtown Farmers Market, the Double Up Food Bucks, and I will be sharing her presentation here. So let me pull that up for you. Whenever you're ready, Brenda.
All right, I'm ready. Hello, everybody. As Becca said, I'm Brenda Espinosa Patton. I'm the policy manager with Blue Zones Project, which is under the philanthropic arm of Texas Health Resources. I'll just quickly, because I hope that most of you are familiar with our work, but for those that are not, Blue Zones Project, we're a community-wide well-being initiative that began here in Fort Worth in 2014. We have focused on changing the environment around us to make healthy choices easier, which of course includes food. And we've done this by working with partners and leaders throughout the community. In 2018, we really took a hard look at areas of the community where food access was the most critical. And that's one of the two major components that I focus my work on. So today I'll talk to you about our newest endeavor, the Double Up Food Bucks. You can go to the next slide. I'll just quickly share, I'll talk about Double Up Food Bucks, what it is, what we're doing here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and some opportunities ahead. Next slide. I think we've heard plenty of this today on our call, and I'm sure Victoria will share a little more, but research does show that one of the reasons why particularly SNAP participants aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables is because of affordability. And of course, there's other components to that, such as not appropriate cooking equipment at home, education on how to cook, and of course, as it was mentioned before, transportation issues. So price and affordability is the focus of Double Up Food Bucks program. Next up. I'll quickly share. The Double Up Food Bucks program is a healthy food incentive program that addresses the challenge by doubling SNAP customers' purchasing power when they use their benefits in a farmer's market, or in our case, farmer's market and grocery stores. They are also designated to support locally grown produce, which in turn, of course, supports area growers and hopefully improves the community food environment and stimulates our local economy. So it's a win-win-win all around. Next. So Double Up Food Bucks is actually a nationwide program. It's been a proven model across all of these states, and Fort Worth joins, I want to say, one of 4 or maybe 5 programs in Texas. So we're really excited about that. Next up. So Double Up Food Bucks officially launched at Cowtown Farmers Market on May 16th. It was really rainy and cold for some crazy reason. There's Charlie and his beautiful wife, Laura. And the way that Double Up Food Bucks works at Cowtown Farmers Market is a 1-to-1 match. When we originally submitted the USDA waiver for the program, we submitted it as a 1-to-1 match for up to $10 a day. But now partially to address the pandemic, and then also just to study the impact of what it would do, we're actually offering 100% match, which means that there's no limit to the SNAP benefits that you can match. And I hope Charlie has good things to say about that. I do know one Saturday they had 10 SNAP customers versus 0 the weekend before. So I think our numbers are getting up there, right, Charlie? I think we're getting more and more SNAP customers.
Yes, ma'am, it sure is.
Okay, next slide. So just quickly, for those that are kind of familiar on how it actually works at the market, and we'll actually be there on Saturday to film a little short video to publicize on how it works. But basically the way it works, you go to Shine's Farm Stand, which is Charlie's booth. It has Double Up Food Bucks banner all over, and you are able to use your Lone Star card to exchange your benefits for tokens that you can then use.
I think we lost you there, Brenda.
Hey, Becca,
Yes,
mind if I go on that part?
go ahead.
So the way it operates is that you go to the Shine's Farm Stand booth, which is my booth, but I'll have this sign out in front of it. The way it operates is that you come to the booth. We have the device there for you to swipe your Lone Star card. We give you tokens in double the amount that we charge your account for. So if you swipe for $20, we give you $40, $40 worth of tokens. You then spend those tokens at the any booth with food at it. We do have a dog food that you cannot purchase, and I believe you cannot purchase hot tamales because you can buy frozen tamales but not prepared food with your SNAP. Oh, and you cannot buy goat soap. So after you have purchased it, we have set up a thing through Cowtown so that we have a fund in order to make sure that the farmers get paid each day instead of having to wait to go through a system to be repaid.
Wonderful. I had a couple questions come through, and Charlie, maybe you know the answer to these. Our SNAP participants provided cooking ideas or instructions for the produce available at the farm stands?
So many of our farmers have tips and recipes that go along with the food that you purchase from them. And when we are not in a pandemic, we have cooking demonstrations 4 times a year, so people can see how to not only SNAP vendors or SNAP recipients, but also SNAP, but everyone else, the public, can see how to cook with the fresh vegetables.
Wonderful. Another question from Elizabeth is, how can we access these marketing pieces for our locations and to communicate this opportunity to their clients?
I don't have that answer. We would have to get that from Brenda. So maybe just referencing Brenda's contact information might be the way to go about that.
Yes, we can do that. And Elizabeth, I'll find out if we don't get Brenda back here, if we can find a link, or Micheline may know also if there's an answer to where these materials are located.
Becca, let me jump in here real quick. This is a great time for us to mention that we are partnering with Cowtown for the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program that Charlie mentioned earlier. And what that means is that we are bringing Cowtown neighborhood farmers markets to Arlington, White Settlement, Haltom City, and 2 Fort Worth locations. We will be sending out a ton of information about that soon, but for now, you can find information at tafb.org. And of course, we are accepting the Lone Star card and double up bucks there as well. So that might be a little closer for some folks than the regular Saturday and Wednesday market.
Awesome. And then Micheline or Charlie, whoever knows the answer to this, Jeff would like to know who is covering the gap in the program, who's making up the difference when they're doubling their bucks.
It's the Blue Zones program. So Texas Health Resources has a charitable arm that operates Blue Zones, and Blue Zones are the ones covering the difference.
Wonderful.
Also, let me add to what Micheline said that because it is this day and age, if you like and follow the Cowtown Facebook page, we will also have updates of where our Farmers Market Nutrition Program will be each week.
Wonderful, thank you. So if you were able to register when you logged on to Zoom today, I will be able to send you out all this information afterwards. If you didn't have to enter your email address to get in here, you might send it in the chat just to the panelists and I can save it, but I'll get all this information and make sure we get this sent out about the Farmers Market Nutrition Program WIC markets, as well as the Double Up Food Bucks and all the other presentations. So we'll move on to Victoria's presentation, and Brenda's not here for me to apologize to her, but I didn't introduce her properly, but she is also the treasurer of the Food Policy Council, as well as working at the Blue Zones Project. But next, let me make sure we went through all of Brenda's slides here. If not, I'll get out of them. All right. So next, I will turn it over to Victoria Nelson, who is going to share, being related to COVID, some of the resources that the Tarrant County Food Policy Council has on their website, as well as what to look forward to from us here in the near future. Victoria Nelson is a member of the Food Policy Council and the Major Gifts Officer at Catholic Charities of Fort Worth. She is our last presenter today, so if you have any further questions, make sure to put those in the chat box, and we'll get those answered here before Susie wraps us up at the end. So Victoria, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Becca, and thank you everybody for being here today. I just wanted to take this time to discuss that there are resources available now to help respond, to help the community respond to the COVID-19 crisis, as well as to look forward to in the future. And so first thing we want to do is discuss, and I will share my screen, the resource page that the Tarrant County Food Policy Council has set up just for you. So if you go to our website at tarrantcountyfoodpolicycouncil.org, you can click a link for COVID-19 local food resources. And so it's very important to know where to go for help with when finding food is a challenge. And so of course, I mean, the Tarrant Area Food Bank is doing amazing work here, and there's just a lot of other resources as well, including shout out to Taste Community Restaurant. They are part of our Food Policy Council, as well as several of these others are. And so you can see here that we have tried to categorize resources by group that might need them. So we have food for children, we have food for seniors, and food for everyone. And so if you know of anyone that's looking for assistance, or if you're looking for places that you can support at this time with your time, treasure, or talent, these are all great resources. And one thing I will say is that this is not necessarily a complete list. So you'll see at the top here that we are constantly updating this website. So whenever we receive information, we will add it for you. So there's a link here where you can click and email us to add resources to this page. And then when you scroll down, you can see maybe it's not exactly somewhere where you can find food, but it's businesses who care, who are open, who are helping right now. There are other resources listed, like how to apply for benefits, how to get help with other needs that you may have or that someone may have that's not necessarily a food insecurity need. And then, as I mentioned, how you can help. And so one thing I wanted to do is just share a little bit more about Catholic Charities Fort Worth as well. Our mission is to provide service for those in need, to advocate compassion and justice in the structures of society, and to call all people of goodwill to do the same. And you know, we can't do that without your help. And one myth I'll bust right now is that we're not just for Catholics. We are here because of our calling, and we're here to help anyone who needs help. And so we're so proud to have partnered with the Tarrant Area Food Bank on the initiatives that Julie mentioned. So if you know of anyone that needs help finding food, you can certainly give our phone number, which is listed here on this website, a call, and we'll match you up with a food pantry. And like Julie said, if we can't get you to a food pantry or get it delivered, we'll deliver it for you. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. One thing, let me stop sharing here. So with Catholic Charities Fort Worth, we recognize that breaking the cycle of generational poverty and situational poverty is going to help people achieve their full potential, as well as, you know, get out of food insecurity if that is a problem that their family is facing. And so when we define out of poverty, it's not just that federal poverty line. Like, we're looking for folks to have a living wage, be out of any harmful debt, have savings built up, and be off of government assistance. And right now, only 30% of Tarrant County actually meets that definition, so we have a long way to go. Catholic Charities Fort Worth serves 28 counties, and so there's a lot of diversity to our work, and there's lots of work to be done. So we're offering emergency financial assistance right now for folks who are suffering due to the pandemic. And we're also offering long-term and short-term case management for folks who need a navigator to walk alongside with them and help them overcome these barriers. And so I just wanted to put that out there. That's what we did. And I've been involved with the Food Policy Council for many years now, and I'm really pleased that Catholic Charities is so active in it as well. Another thing I'll mention too is that we have our assistance with enrolling for SNAP. So if you know of anyone who needs assistance, we can offer that at this time. So regarding the Food Policy Council, we are going to be offering virtual workshops coming up. We're going to be offering how-tos and maybe even some farm and garden tours so we can see what it's like around the county, even though we're all remaining at home or safely guarded in our workplaces. And so please make sure you're signed up either on our Facebook or on our website. You can sign up for our newsletter there so you can be alerted to when we offer those exciting programs. And like was mentioned earlier on the call, we will be hosting our Dig Deep conference this year in partnership with the Tarrant Area Food Bank. And this will be actually offered on our website. We're taking it virtual, as I'm sure is very familiar at this point. That event will take place on July 24th and 25th. And so, like I mentioned in the chat, either go to our website or follow us on Facebook for announcements about that. But what Dig Deep is it's a conference for growers, and it's going to provide you a fresh take on gardening. And so during this event, we'll be bringing gardeners, small-scale farmers, and ranchers together. And they'll have an opportunity to come together for 2 days of networking and learning. And so basically, this is great for beginner or intermediate level growers, and you'll just be walking away with tips for how to make your garden the best it can be. And I'm sitting here looking at my garden. It's really sorry. We had some, I think, fungus on the tomato plants last night, so we'll have to be figuring that one out. But basically, in the past, we've offered different session topics, and so if you have any ideas, we'd certainly love to hear those at this time. Past session topics have included using rainwater for irrigation, how to start a community garden, which could be an awesome thing to do at a school or a parish, growing seedlings indoors and how to build healthy soil, and also resources and tools for low maintenance gardening, which is probably going to be good for everybody we know. So another good one is how to make simple changes that can reduce food waste. This is really important as we're facing, food insecurity. We want to make sure that we're using all the food that we have. So that is probably it, unless there are any questions for me. And we're always open for more ideas from y'all. So we have general meetings every other month, and I know Susie's going to address some next steps as well, but we'll really forward to having your input.
Thanks so much, Victoria. Dave also wanted to remind everyone that we do have some gardening resources already existing on our Tarrant County Food Policy Council website. So definitely check those out under the resources tabs if you want to get a little head start on the Dig Deep conference. So next, I will turn it over to Susie Marshall, our chair, to wrap up the meeting. And if any questions pop up along the way, we can definitely answer those. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today and sticking with us. I know it's a long meeting with some really great content. And thank you to all our presenters. So Susie, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Yes, I'm going to echo that. Thank you for being with us today. We know you had lots of other options and maybe you're a little tired of Zoom, and we're glad you're here. I think we've had a fantastic slate of presenters, and thanks to each of you for bringing your different piece of food system and food system issues. We went from just food insecurity issues, food assistance, into local farmers and federal programs and places where all of those kind of combine and meet each other to try to serve the needs, the food needs of people in our area. As Victoria indicated, we will have a meeting in August again. It's very possible it might be virtual. We'll see how the world is at that point. But look for the other online things happening, Dig Deep and the other workshops and things like that. We encourage you to follow us on social media and share our posts. Always buy from local businesses anytime you can. I had one of the things my organization does is we operate a store called Market Provisions at the Dallas Farmers Market. And I had a young woman come in one day and ask me if I shopped at farmers markets, and I said yes. And she said, "How do you afford that?" And for me, I'm in a position where I can make some choices. I said, but I I value food, so I'm willing to spend more on that. And so I hope you will also consider that, and having that relationship with your local farmers and supporting the food assistance programs that are providing food for folks in this time of increased need. If you're able to donate your time and or your money to those entities, that would be all of us nonprofits, whether we're on the food assistance side or the food production side. It's very welcome and appreciated. Be on the lookout for more information. Let us know if you'd like to get more involved. There are ways to do that and to be an official member of the council and get into participating. So look for information on the website and on social media about how you can get involved and how you can participate in upcoming entities. And I really appreciate, again, everyone joining us and all of our presenters. And we will see you next time. Stay safe.